evening. Welcome to the September 17th, 2015 Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. I'm going to go through with some opening comments and then we'll get into our hearings. We have 4 public hearings tonight and then open meeting. I'll start. I don't have my introductory comments like I usually do, so I'll wing it. But if you could just silence your cell phone. What we'll do is that once we open public hearing, we will call the applicant or appellant up to give a presentation. Usually we allow 15 minutes for each presentation. Then I know tonight we have the wind turbine, so the town will be offered an opportunity to speak as well. Public comment will then be received. When you're called upon, just step up, give your name and address, and we'll hear comment. And if there's questions, we'll try to get answers to those questions. I'll start with introducing the board. Furthest to the right is John Sutherland. He's an associate member. To John's left is Mark Kuhl. He's also an associate member. To my immediate right is Ken Foreman. He's vice chairman of the board. To my left is TJ Hurry. He's the clerk of the board. To TJ's left and your right is Ed Van Kuren. He is a regular voting member of the board. And then Paul Murphy is at the end. He's also a regular voting member of the board. Sari Budrow is our zoning administrator. Drade Guy-Shecker is here, our recording secretary. And we also have special counsel to the board, Mark Bobrowski, who is in attendance as well. So we will start, I believe the first matter is 7115, McSorley, if the clerk could read that in.
Being all persons deemed affected by the Board of Appeals under Section 11 of Chapter 40A of the Massachusetts General Laws, you are hereby notified that Peter W. McSorley of Braintree, Massachusetts, applied to the Zoning Board of Appeals pursuant to Section 240-3C of the Code of Falmouth to raise and reconstruct the pre-existing non-conforming single-family dwelling on subject property known as 10 Nantucket Ave, Falmouth. For referrals, no comment from planning. Fire department, no issues. From building, new construction shall conform to all flood zone construction requirements per Massachusetts State Building Code. From health, this law will be served by the Little Pond Sewer Service Area project. The proposed reconstruction dwelling will have the same number of bedrooms as the existing, and absent any indication the existing septic system in failure, no objection. And we also have one, let's see. This would be from, looks like engineering, and it's the standard comment.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, all the members will be regular voting members?
Regular voting members, thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. For the record, my name is Kevin Clower. I'm an attorney with Ahmet Law Firm here in Falmouth, and I represent Peter and Donna McSorley, the owners of 10 Nantucket Avenue, and the applicants in this matter. Mr. McSorley is with us this evening in the back row here. The McSorleys have owned this property for over 30 years. Due to some recent life events, they have decided that now is the time to make significant renovations that they've been discussing and dreaming of for years, and they're before you tonight for that reason. 10 Nantucket Avenue is a residential lot located in the Falmouth Heights neighborhood, consisting of 3,717 square feet in a residential C district. The current structure is a 1.5-story, 4-bedroom home built in approximately 1870. It is non-conforming as to setbacks from Massachusetts Avenue, being 4.8 feet where 25 feet is required, setback from Nantucket Avenue being 3.2 feet where 25 feet is required, and lot coverage by structure being 28.9% where 20% is allowed by right, and up to 25% is allowed with a special permit. In addition, the property is also in an AE 13 flood zone. The existing first floor elevation is at 11.59 feet. Like many other homeowners in this neighborhood, the McSorleys are seeking to update the home to make it more aesthetically pleasing, more functional, and as a result of those renovations, bringing the property into compliance with the flood zone standards. They are seeking to raise and rebuild the structure and are applying under Falmouth zoning bylaw section 240-3, which states that pre-existing non-conforming structures may be changed by special permit provided they're not substantially more detrimental than the existing structure. The bylaw goes on to state that the board should consider the standards of 240-216 and whether the alteration of the structure creates a new dimensional nonconformity, impairs views of vistas, or does not reasonably conform to the average dimensions in the neighborhood. This renovation will increase the living space in the home, but no new bedrooms will be created. The structure will be raised as to conform with the flood zone standards. Storage will be moved from the crawl space to an unfinished attic. The mechanicals will likewise be moved out of the flood zone into the unfinished attic. The new height of the structure will be 32 feet below the 35 feet allowed. And the existing nonconformities will be improved. The setback to Nantucket Avenue will increase from 3.2 feet to 5.8 feet, and the lot coverage will be reduced from 28.9% to 28.5%. The result of these renovations is a structure that's more conforming than the current existing home. It's going to be in compliance with the flood zone standards and will be more useful and a more inviting space for the applicants. Further, this structure will be in character with the neighborhood. Based on assessor's records and GIS maps, the average lot coverage by structure of the homes within a 300-foot circle, which is approximately a 3-block radius, is 28.94%. The proposed residence will be at 28.5%. The average bulk of these structures, which was calculated by the finished square footage above grade, based on the assessor's records, is 2,751 square feet. This home will be 2,540 square feet. Both of these figures are below the average dimensions found in the neighborhood. This project is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing structure. The project will not cause any adverse effects. There will be no new nonconformity. The existing nonconformities will be improved. No public view of vista will be impaired, and the project will meet the standards of 240-216. Therefore, I submit that this project meets the criteria of 240-3, and we ask that you grant the permit this evening. I'd be happy to address any questions that the board may have.
See if anybody has any questions for you. John, do you have any questions?
I do. No, I did not.
Mark?
I do. Kevin, clerk read the initial report, and I read the building referral, specifically that they had asked for consideration regarding a hard surface apron.
A new plan was actually submitted today, and I'm sorry if it didn't make it to you, but the plan does show a hard surface apron along the southerly edge of the property facing Nantucket Avenue.
So that's new.
Yep, and that was done specifically to address that concern. I think it was, I'm not sure if it was the engineering department or which department it was.
Building, I think.
We have that, Kevin.
Yep.
That's what the board is looking at.
Okay, and that's, I think Mr. Gould just doesn't have a plan in front of him at the moment.
Not the most recent, I apologize.
That's
Oh,
okay.
there you go.
And so that was done to specifically address that concern, and that was the only change to the plan.
All right, and so, which brings me, you were talking about average bulk. In the file, there was no list of heights, lot coverage comparisons. Why was that? I mean, why was that absent, do you know?
Because I finished it at midnight last night.
You have something to submit to the board?
I can submit it to the board, absolutely.
And
Properties highlighted in peach exceed 25% lot coverage. The properties highlighted in yellow are between 20 and 25% lot coverage. Height and feet is not shown on there because we do not have the height calculations for all the buildings in the neighborhood. We do show story height, which was obtained from the assessor's records, and I do have a specific height for some properties in the immediate surrounding area, which I can provide if you'd like.
Just a clerical question. On the application, the proposed project or the proposed specifies 2 bedrooms.
That was an error, I noticed that today, actually.
Okay.
I caught that
So-
myself. So that it is remaining a 4-bedroom as shown on the plans that were submitted.
Just for application purposes,
Mhm.
that's good. And the existing height of the current structure is?
23, I believe it's 23.2. I know it's 23.
23.3.
23.3. Existing building height is 23.3.
Okay. And just to clarify the attic space purpose,
It's going to be for storage and mechanicals,
unfinished?
unfinished.
That's all I have.
Thanks, Mark. TJ?
Let's see, this might be another discrepancy that was in the application and with the testimony given, Kevin. I believe the application said it was a 2-story dwelling, but through testimony you said it was 1.5.
Yes, that was based on the application was based on my eyeball view of it. The actual definition of it within the assessor's record is 1.5 stories.
That's it for me.
Thank you. Ed? Paul?
No, no questions.
Ken?
So just, the bulk estimate is just the sum of the square footage of each of the stories?
Yes.
That's it?
Oh, okay. I have some questions, Kevin. The existing septic, I know the Board of Health referral, I guess referred to the adequacy of that, is that?
I think the Board of Health referral said absent any evidence of failure, which, I mean, we don't have any evidence of failure, but a Title V inspection was not completed.
Okay,
But there's nothing indicating a failure to this point.
okay.
And obviously, if it does fail, then we'll have to address it.
Okay. Is the existing shed calculated into the lot coverage?
It's calculated into the existing lot coverage, but we'll, actually, you know what, I take that back. I believe the existing lot coverage, he says existing dwelling, deck, porch, and existing lot coverage by structures, dwelling, deck, porch, and steps. He did not calculate the 37 square foot shed, but that will be removed,
It will be?
yes.
Okay. Any plans to put any new shed?
No,
What is the height of the porch, existing porch?
the existing height of the first floor is 11.59 feet.
Okay.
Porch,
And do you know its width? And then,
as shown on the plan.
all right.
Starting route to 313 Grand Avenue. Head southeast on Main Street.
Is that to the dock you're going to?
Better than me.
And you said the story height, the existing story's 1.5,
Yes.
and it will be 2.5?
Yes.
Is that- What is the square footage of the attic?
It is 451 square feet.
Okay. And that was not calculated then into your bulk calculation?
That was, so, if you look at the building plans, I had actually been under the impression that the right-hand portion of the attic was going to be finished, and I was just corrected of that by my clients this morning. The right-hand portion of the attic was calculated.
Okay, all right.
The left-hand unfinished attic is not calculated, because I only looked at the, what I thought was going to be the finished area, because that's all I calculated in any of the bulk calculations, was finished attic.
Right, okay,
So our bulk would be even less if that's not to be finished.
okay. What's the ceiling height in the attic?
I don't have that figure.
Okay. Okay, that's all my questions for now. Ed, you have any other?
Well, so, I mean, I think what Kim is kind of driving at is what's the proposed use in the attic?
Mechanicals and storage,
That's it.
that's it.
No habitable space?
No. No.
Okay.
But that is, as required, the mechanicals can't be within the flood zone. They don't want them on the first floor or the second floor, because that's going to be their living and sleeping accommodations, so they're going to put the mechanicals in the attic, as is done in a lot of these
No,
cases.
that makes sense.
And that's really their only storage space as well.
Sri, do you have any questions?
I have one more.
Okay. well,
Kevin, can you, you had mentioned it, but I didn't catch the gist of it. Title V inspection was or was not?
It was not completed.
Was not complete.
The health department referral simply said absent any evidence of failure, and to this point, there has been no evidence of failure. It's a seasonal system used a few months out of the year,
And
addressed
are
appropriately.
they on the docket for the Little Pond sewer system
I
expansion?
don't believe so. I actually looked at the sewer map myself, and I was surprised that was in the referral, because I did not, looking at the sewer map, I did not see this area highlighted. So I was surprised that was in the health department referral. But maybe they know something I don't know.
So we, at the very least, have a bit of confusion then.
No,
I-
it's not scheduled.
It's not scheduled?
Okay, so that's not correct.
Does anybody else have any questions for right now? See if anybody has a comment. Hold on. Is anybody here to speak in opposition to this application? In favor of this application? Okay, let's see what the board wants to do. Thank you. Anybody like to have any discussion on this?
Sure.
Okay.
I like the plan with the exception, my contention would be both, again. Realizing the flood zone map changes that are going to have effect, but we have to go on what we have to work with as far as bylaws. Though in my walkabout through the neighborhood on my site visit, I did notice, and what Kevin provided us, there are quite a few 2.5-story single-family dwellings in close proximity to this. So, just putting it out for the board's consideration. But at the end of the day, I would go forward on this project.
Anyone else have anything?
I mean, I think it's a customary reconstruction. You know, these folks are a bit constrained. They've got a 3,700 square foot lot. They have to elevate out of the floodplain. They're encouraged to do so by the federal regulations. It's 2 stories with storage in the attic. Yeah, I mean, I have no objections at all. I think it's consistent with the trend and what's going on in the neighborhood. Yeah, I have no objection to it.
TJ?
No overall objection. No, I think it's in keeping with the neighborhood and the Heights area. I did have some concern about the bulk, but after looking at these calculations, I'm all right with it.
Okay. You're shaking your head.
No, I'm shaking my head in agreement.
Yeah.
I think, you know, very good presentation, and the data on the bulk is quite clear that they're right in the middle range. So they're only elevating the first floor 4.6 feet, so 4.5 feet, I guess. Compared to some we've seen, I think this one is reasonable.
So I'll move to close. Second.
Oh, sorry, all those in
You're the
favor?
chair.
You look like you were scheming, Kim, so
I was thinking about, I didn't say anything.
I know, you
And
didn't.
you moved to close.
You didn't
that's
make any
why.
comments, so
You can
Before,
still
well,
talk during
I
the,
will.
during
it's
the
been
debate.
seconded, and you can
Okay,
speak.
well, that's, we'll vote to close. That's okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, I can't vote, so.
No, you can't.
Can I even make the motion?
No, if you
No, I
can't
can't make
vote,
the
you
motion.
can't make the,
That's why I
I
didn't
take that
respond to it.
So can we revote that, please?
I'll
Yes.
move to close.
Okay, so that was Mr. Foreman and Mr. Van Kuren. All those in favor? Aye. Unanimous. I had some concerns about the project, but now we've closed. I really am, I guess, troubled by the bulk, and I do appreciate the calculations. I think it shows it's in keeping with the immediate neighborhood. But I think that there's a difference from having a porch, and that's why I was asking about the porch, the height of the porch, because now you're going to have a structure that's 32 feet, 5 feet in, or whatever, instead of a porch that's 11 feet tall. So I think that that's a big change, and I think it's a substantial change. So that was my only concern, bulk, the height of, I guess the height of the structure too, in that area. And I'm always a little bit concerned when projects, and I understand it's a small lot, Falmouth Heights is tight, but in lot coverage, I know that there's a lot of lot coverage, but I think that there's a difference between having a cottage on a small lot and having a 32-foot, 4-bedroom home on a small lot. So that's my concern. But everybody else seems to be in favor, so
Well, again, I'm just looking at the
the calculations.
calculations and our criteria, which is really, is it in keeping with the neighborhood?
Mhm.
And this neighborhood, it is.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay then, shall we move on?
Move in favor?
Okay.
Grant?
Mr. Foreman, second,
Okay.
and Mr. Van Kuren. So findings.
So we have
We just have one, keeping with the neighborhood.
small reductions in the setback nonconformity and lot coverage nonconformity, so that it's not more detrimental with respect to those.
Shed was gonna be removed.
Right.
No, let's see, the bedroom count remains at 4.
4. And I guess we could do a finding that they're elevating it because it's in the flood zone.
To meet flood zone regulations.
Right.
The utility of the space is improved, functionality anyway. Testimony had it that attic space will be for storage and mechanical, so.
And unfinished.
And unfinished. 240-216.
How do you want to address 242-16E,
With regard to the,
septic?
I guess
Do you want to make a finding on that?
Oh, adequacy of the method of sewage disposal?
I would make a finding that a Title V inspection was not conducted.
But the Board of Health has to address that prior to the building permit being issued, so you're going to make a finding testimony was that
there
the
was
septic has not been inspected?
not been inspected and a history of no,
No evidence of failure.
Testimony that there was that they haven't had any problems.
yeah.
Board of Health, so proper to- Okay.
Then conditions would be
Per plan?
per plan, and basically,
Per plans, unfinished attic,
right.
4 bedrooms.
Remove the shed,
I'm sorry?
removal of the shed.
And there was no response from the water department, correct? No referral? So I'd like to keep the standard condition in there that they need to contact the DPW.
Okay.
Because when you upgrade, you don't know what size water service you have that may need to be upgraded.
One more finding for the board's consideration, via testimony, it was discussed, as opposed to what's the referral from the health department said, that this site is not planned for the Little Pond sewer system upgrade.
It's not in the plans at the moment.
I'd like to make that finding as opposed to what the
Board of
Yeah.
Health
Board of Health
referral?
said.
Yeah, I agree, that's important.
Okay, so I'll just tie that in with the other finding, if that's okay. Testimony and then the Board of Health referral in the finding. Okay? Any other conditions?
We have the one about attic space.
I have per plans, unfinished attic, storage, and mechanicals, 4 bedrooms, remove shed. Contact the water department. I think that's it, because they fixed the apron,
Yeah,
so it would be per
Per
plans.
plan.
all right.
Okay, so that was Mr. Foreman and Mr. Van Kuren. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Sorry, Mark.
Sorry for misleading you.
I was thinking about what my thoughts were.
Yeah, I know. It's
Over
horrible.
the course of the past 3 meetings, I'm always saying, okay, I'll move it forward, either me or Ed.
Here's the ballot.
So, I jumped in there.
I got a good feel.
So, Madam Chair, given the next agenda items, I'll recuse myself from the next 3 hearings and excuse myself from the end of the agenda.
Okay,
All right?
thank
I
you.
hear you're leaving.
John, could you scoot in a little bit so the camera and the speaker picture up, please? Thank you. Good night, Mark.
Okay, so next, we'll open these 3 hearings together, but I do want to know, once they're open, I'll make some comments about how we're going to be handling those hearings. They are all separate, independent hearings, so they're not combined, consolidated, they're all separate. So, TJ, I'll just give you the honors, thank you.
Being all persons deemed affected by the Board of Appeals under Section 11 of Chapter 40A of the Massachusetts General Laws, you are hereby notified that Neil and Elizabeth Anderson of West Falmouth, Mass. Filed an appeal with the town clerk pursuant to Section 240-202 of the Code of Falmouth regarding a lack of zoning enforcement by the zoning enforcement officer to cease and desist operations of Wind 1 and Wind 2 turbines located at the town's wastewater treatment facility known as 154 Blacksmith Shop Road, West Falmouth, Mass. And for referrals, from planning, no comment. And from the building department, no comment. And I'll continue on with these. Being all persons deemed affected by the Board of Appeals under Section 11 of Chapter 40A of the Massachusetts General Laws, you are hereby notified that Brian Elder et al. Of West Falmouth, Mass.
Excuse me, Malcolm, the door's not allowed to be closed during a public hearing. So, She'll take care of the talking. Thank you very much. Sorry.
Brian Elder et al. Of West Falmouth, Massachusetts, filed an appeal with the town clerk pursuant to Section 240-202 of the Code of Falmouth regarding a lack of zoning enforcement by the zoning enforcement officer to cease and desist operations of Wind 1 turbine located at the town's wastewater treatment facility known as 154 Blacksmith Shop Road, West Falmouth, Massachusetts. For referrals, planning, no comment, and building, no comment. Being all persons deemed affected by the Board of Appeals under Section 11 of Chapter 40A of the Massachusetts General Laws, you are hereby notified that Linda Obugawa et al. Of West Falmouth, Massachusetts, filed an appeal with the town clerk pursuant to Section 240-202 of the Code of Falmouth regarding a lack of zoning enforcement by the zoning enforcement officer to cease and desist operations of Wind 2 turbine located at the town's wastewater treatment facility known as 154 Blacksmith Shop Road, West Falmouth, Mass. And for referrals, Planning Department, no comment. And Building Department, no comment.
Okay, thank you, TJ. So at the outset, I know that there has been some correspondence between the attorneys as to the best, I guess, format of tonight. I think what we will do is handle Wind 1 first. So the Elder appeal deals specifically with Wind 1, as does the Anderson. It deals with Wind 1 and Wind 2. We previously had a hearing for a cease and desist on Wind 1, so I think it makes sense to address Wind 1 first, because it may present different legal and factual arguments versus Wind 2. So we'll address Wind 1 first, and then we will get to Wind 2. So, Mr. Sunny, if you'd like to speak as to Wind 1.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the zoning board. My name is Christopher Senni. I'm an attorney in Westboro, Massachusetts, and I represent a dozen Falmouth citizens who live in neighborhoods around the town's two wind turbines, Wind 1 and Wind 2. In cooperation with counsel for this board and also counsel for the Board of Selectmen, Attorney Tillotson, we agreed that I would take the board through a PowerPoint presentation. If it's okay if we orient it toward Wind 1, but it's going to have reference in it to Wind 2, if that's okay. But I can direct my comments more to Wind 1 than Wind 2 if you prefer.
Well, I think, I do want to address the PowerPoint to some degree, not to stop you kind of in your tracks as you're proceeding. I know that you spent a lot of time preparing this. I flipped through the PowerPoint today. I think a lot of it goes to the substantive aspects of the special permit appeal. So I think that we need to focus, or we do need to focus, now I think, we do need to focus this appeal as to the special permit, as to the cease and desist, not the special permit. So whether your clients have a legal right to a cease and desist. So to the extent that this touches on different aspects of the operation of the wind turbines and whether or not the town could be entitled to a special permit or is not entitled to a special permit, that is obviously for a different day, and we will be hearing about that soon in October. So if you could focus on the cease and desist, I think that that would be good. And of course, you can always present this in that hearing as well. But I just wanted to make those opening comments.
The reason I prepared this PowerPoint presentation is that the question of whether the neighbors or the community are entitled to a cease and desist order on Wind 1 and Wind 2 is related to how we got to where we are today. And the question of the actions taken by the town back in 2008 and in 2010 when decisions were made to build the two turbines. And to some extent, going through that history helps us put a perspective on whether or not this board believes we've arrived at a point where it should order a cease and desist order, at least until the turbines have gone through the special permit process. So I would like to proceed with the PowerPoint. As I said, I can try very hard to minimize discussion about the special permit, but again, it's really only a context. Most of the board members were not on this board when it heard the original appeal about whether or not a special permit was needed, or when it heard nuisance claims by the Funfars or the Andersons. So this is an attempt to sort of assess where we are and put some perspective in place for this discussion. At the end of the PowerPoint presentation, I focus in exactly on whether or not this board will consider a cease and desist order. I'll go very quickly. Todd, would you mind advancing the slides. Where is the best place for me to stand?
Right there.
Right here?
Yes, so
Am I blocking?
the camera and the TV can pick you up.
No, just,
I'm not sure which of these
The top ones.
One marked with orange.
best one we want to do, right? Does that help?
The one below it, too.
There you go.
Okay, next. Our clients are Neil and Betsy Anderson. I represent them together with Attorney Alec Watt, who's here, Todd and Terry Drummy, Kathy and Brian Elder, Brian and Diane Funfar, John Ford, Robbie Laird, Linda Okakawa, and Mark Poole. Next. These are some samples of clients' sworn testimony. Barry Funfar said, "My perception sees, hears, and feels a rather multifaceted, sometimes bewildering array of effects. Things were fine before the machines were erected. We are under continual bombardment of unwanted stimuli that has caused my quality of life, my health, and my rights to use and enjoy my own property to be severely marginalized." Next. Linda has testified, "Since the turbines are not running on Sundays, per an injunction in another case, I experience relief from stress, fatigue, etc. I plan my week around Sunday to be at home to accomplish tasks, to invite others to the house. The value of this respite and knowing this is a peaceful time I can count on is incalculable." Next. Terry Drummy has testified, "When I am woken up from that sleep, in the background there is often a low thumping, swooshing noise and/or vibration and pressure. This never occurred before the turbines were built. Lastly, the butterfly wings description that I give is difficult to explain, but when you get settled and are trying to go to sleep, or if you get woken up from sleep and are trying to get back to sleep, sometimes you slightly feel the turbines. It is a very gentle weight or pressure on your chest and body cavity." Diane Funfar testified, "As for me, I began having symptoms soon after the turbine began. At first, I did not associate some of them with the turbine. After several trips away from home, I realized many symptoms disappeared. I have experienced frequent headaches, of which pre-turbine I rarely had a headache." Next, Catherine Elder, "I can generally predict when there will be a problem, such as when there is a moderate to high wind and coming from the southwest or from a northerly direction, but there are other times when it is not windy at all, and the pressure waves of the turbine penetrate my home." Next. This next slide is addressing acoustical studies that have been conducted. There are two categories: studies done before Wind 1 was installed and the distress experienced, and studies done after. Before, there is only one study. It's known as the November 2005 KEMA study, or KEMA. Next. KEMA was done 3+ years prior to Wind 1 construction start. It contains sound pressure contour maps of 2 GE model turbines only, not Vestas.
Attorney Sonny, I don't want to interrupt you because I understand that you've prepared and spent a lot of time preparing. But at the same time, as I said in my opening remarks, the legality of a cease and desist order, whether or not during the pendency, I guess, of, right now we're talking about Wind 1, in the context of Wind 1, while the town is applying for a special permit, whether there's a legal right by your clients to seek or have a cease and desist order. I think that this is really going to the special permit. And so I'm not going to say you can't do the presentation, but you will again have the opportunity to give this presentation during the special permit hearing. And if you focus on the cease and desist aspects, to the extent there are any, I think that that would be helpful for everyone.
I don't plan to repeat this PowerPoint presentation again. I brought with me hard copies, paper copies, and digital copies on flash drives, and Surrey Boudreaux has received this.
And the board members received copies
Yes.
of this as well today.
So I promise you, you won't have to sit through this again, but as I contemplated how I wanted to present 3 separate appeals, asking again on Wind 1 for a cease and desist, and for the first time on Wind 2, the presentation I decided I wanted to try to make to your board was one that would provide this context. Your rules usually allow 15 minutes for an applicant, and since we have 3 of these, I hope to be able to do this in less than half an hour. It does communicate a great deal of information that provides some context for the board members. And if some of that is usable in connection with the special permit application that will start October 29th, that's great. I will not repeat this at that time. I may ask that it be considered part of the record. But if you would indulge me, I think the board will see that this ties very nicely at the end into the cease and desist order.
Like I said, you can make the presentation that you want to make, to the extent that it's relevant. And I think this board affords 15 minutes for a presentation on an application to that is information that is relevant to the application. We've always been very strict about that. So obviously, you're counsel to your clients. I know that you did spend a lot of time on this, but we have to look at the legal requirements for a cease and desist order. So to the extent, I understand that this is context, but I think it speaks to the special permit. And
I think it speaks to the cease and desist in the sense that this board will be more inclined to issue a cease and desist order if it understands a lack of good faith. When I stood before you on my appeal of the June 11, 2015 order of Mr. Gore, you refused my request to issue a cease and desist because you said the town had acted in good faith by applying for a special permit. It has not done so with Win 2.
excuse me, I said that the town had acted in good faith in seeking a building permit, and that they did what they need to do, their due diligence, prior to constructing the permits, in my opinion. So I didn't say that the town proceeded in good faith in applying for a special permit. That wasn't what was said. So if you're going to quote what I say, then please limit it to what I said. So that was what was said. So you can proceed. You can proceed.
I'll do this
Thank
very,
you.
very quickly. The KEMA study, the two GE models for which there are contour maps have quieter methods of shedding unwanted wind, feather or pitch control instead of stall. Predicted exceedances, the KEMA study predicted exceedances of local 40 decibel dBA limit at the property line, and it indicated that noise will be studied further in fuller detail as part of the required special permits process, which was skipped by the town. Next. The KEMA study was really about feasibility, financial feasibility. The November 2005 KEMA study was oriented toward wind resources at the site and the financial feasibility of constructing a turbine at this location. It did not claim to be, nor was it, a proper and full assessment of potential adverse acoustical vibration impacts of Wind 1. In fact, out of a total of 55 pages, only 2.5 address noise. This is why the study itself referenced further treatment of noise generated by the planned turbine as part of the special permit process. There was a contradiction. There's a statement in KEMA, consistent with the town ordinance, there should not be excessive noise from the wind turbine above 40 dBA at the property line of the site. That's hard to square with a sentence that appears 8 lines earlier. In both cases, the estimated maximum impact is about 42 to 44 dBA at the property line of residences to the west and south. Next. The KEMA study mentioned the special permit. It referenced the bylaw that we are applying under now. A special use permit is required for construction and operation of windmills in the town of Falmouth. Issues considered in the process include setback and noise. Based on our preliminary project assessment, the recommended location should be able to satisfy its requirements, and no overly contentious permitting issues have been identified. It didn't say that you don't need to do it. It said, we think you'll be able to get through it. No special permit or special use permit has been issued for Wind 1 or Wind 2. The town is presently seeking one for Wind 1. Next. The KEMA study referenced the bylaw that your board has said will be applied to the application for a special permit. The Board of Appeals shall ensure, through the use of appropriate engineering data, that there shall be no adverse impacts on the neighborhood in terms of television interference, ice throw, prop throw, noise, etc. There shall be a rebuttable presumption that noise from the windmill in excess of 40 dBA, as measured at the property line, shall not be excessive. The word "not" was inserted in error and has been removed by the town clerk with town council approval. Next. Who paid for the KEMA study and what do they think of it now? The KEMA study was paid for by the administrator of the state's Renewable Energy Trust Fund. Up to 2009, this was the Massachusetts Technology Collaborative, or MTC. Since 2009, the administrator of the fund has been the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center, or CEC. Together, I refer to them as MTC/CEC. The MTC/CEC sold Wind 1 to the town. Today, the MTC/CEC recognizes that the KEMA study was insufficient. Next. KEMA had not accurately or sufficiently predicted sound pressure. In April 2013, the MTC/CEC staff told its board of directors that the KEMA study had not accurately or sufficiently predicted sound pressures in the surrounding residential neighborhoods from the proposed turbine before Wind One was sold to the town and constructed. In March of 2015, the MTC announced that it was awarding Falmouth relief in the amount of $1,800,000 to help the municipality mitigate the financial impacts associated with reduced operations of its town-owned wind turbine project. Next. Why? Why did the MTC staff point out the insufficiency of the KEMA study it had funded 8 years earlier, 4 years prior to its sale of Wind One to Falmouth, the only treatment of acoustics before Wind One was built? Answer, to get financial support to the town while avoiding setting a precedent. Precedent, what will be the impact on other projects that are subject of neighbor concerns if the MTC helps Falmouth financially? There is substantial evidence that conditions for the Falmouth Wind project are unique, both justifying the action contemplated herein and providing reasonable assurance that the Falmouth resolution will not represent a precedent for other wind projects. For example, and here are the two ways that KEMA was different. Falmouth One was one of the earliest municipally owned megawatt-scale wind turbines installed in Massachusetts. Even though the original MTC Commission feasibility study for Falmouth, KEMA, overestimated the likely acoustic impact, that study did not include a detailed acoustic analysis based on sampling of ambient acoustic conditions, as is our current more rigorous practice, which might have identified a potential exceedance of the 10 decibel limit. The Falmouth wind turbines are of an older design which does not offer low noise operations or other retrofit options. Why the financial support? The MTC-CEC paid for the KEMA study in 2005. In 2006 and 2007, the MTC-CEC had Wind One and another turbine in storage and wanted to find a buyer. Wind One came to be contracted to be sold and installed in the town of Fairhaven. A special permit was applied for in Fairhaven and granted by that town's ZBA, but appealed to the courts. In support of the sale to Fairhaven, the MTC-CEC paid for a 2007 acoustical analysis which considered ambient sound pressure levels and the degree to which those would be increased by the turbine, the prevailing standard of care at the time. Next. The town of Falmouth urged the MTC-CEC to abandon the Fairhaven project because of the time needed to defend the granted special permit and sell Wind One to Falmouth. The town stated through its consultant that there is no similar permitting risk in Falmouth. The MTC-CEC agreed and sold Wind One to Falmouth without causing to be done an acoustical analysis that met the then prevailing standard of care. The MTC-CEC and the town knew that Wind One was being sold to the town without such a study. This is why in 2015 the MTC-CEC awarded the $1,800,000 in assistance. Next. How do we know this? From an email sent by Jason Gifford, consultant to the town of Falmouth, former employee of MTC-CEC. The March 28, 2008 email was addressed to the town manager and assistant town manager of Falmouth. I made sure Deidre understood that there is no similar permitting risk in Falmouth, and that arranging power and rec contracts was the only step left before Falmouth could execute a turbine supply agreement. She agrees that Falmouth is a great project, but I also sense that MTC feels some commitment to Fairhaven. Next. While consulting for the town, Mr. Gifford worked as a senior director of Sustainable Energy Advantage LLC, while previously at the Massachusetts Technology Collaborative, Mr. Gifford was industry, investment, and development manager. How badly did MTC-CEC want to sell Wind One? And the MTC-CEC was aggressively looking for buyers for its two stored turbines. On December 8, 2006, the MTC-CEC issued a notice of availability of two 1.65 megawatt turbines. That notice addressed local permitting schedule. The project proponent must present a credible and documented plan for obtaining all necessary permits in time to construct the project by December 31, 2007. MTC has a preference for projects that have completed the permitting process. So this was to be sold and erected by December 31, 2007. Next. About 4 months after Wind One was supposed to have already been bought and installed somewhere, Falmouth approached MTC-CEC and encouraged it to not wait for the Fairhaven permit to be defended in court. With the expected time delay of if it stuck with the Fairhaven project, the MTC-CEC was anxious to get Wind One sold. Next. The Massachusetts Renewable Energy Trust Fund is supported by a non-bypassable surcharge of a certain amount of money per kilowatt hour imposed on customers of all investor-owned electric utilities and competitive municipal utilities in Massachusetts. The fund collects millions of dollars every year from ratepayers. The fund does not have an expiration date. Did everyone agree to skip the special permit process in Falmouth? Not initially. The town's contracted professional engineer, Weston and Sampson, whose scope of work included local permitting on both turbines, prepared permitting drawings and a special permit application for Wind 1 dated May 7, 2008. The application now before the ZBA was actually prepared in May of 2008 and not submitted. Next. The override. 6 days after Weston and Sampson prepared the ZBA application, the Falmouth town planner presented a memo to the building commissioner asking him to sign off that no permit was needed. The town's professional staff overrode the opinion of the town's contracted professional engineer. Next. A representation to its board. The MTC staff told its board in April 2013 that study, KEMA, did not include a detailed acoustic analysis based upon sampling of ambient acoustic conditions, as is our current more rigorous practice, which might have identified a potential exceedance of the 10 decibel limit. Next. Oh, what was that full story? In 2007, MTCCEC funded the Fairhaven study by Tech Environmental Inc. when Wind 1 was going to be sold by MTCCEC for installation on town of Fairhaven land. It does not appear that the staff explained to its board that it had funded such a study when the turbine was considered for Fairhaven and did not fund or require that such a study be done prior to it selling the turbine to Falmouth. Next. Falmouth also knew what a serious acoustical analysis looked like. When the Falmouth ZBA reviewed the special permit application for the Notice Clean Energy turbine in early 2008, same size and model as Wind 1 and 2, it reviewed an acoustical analysis dated March 4, 2008, prepared by Epsilon Associates. The Epsilon study ran 23 pages and contained over a dozen charts, tables, maps, and figures evaluating the potential acoustical impacts of the Notice turbine on adjacent neighbors, beginning with an analysis of existing ambient sound levels in the adjacent neighborhoods and the degree to which those would be increased by the proposed turbine. While the Epsilon study had many shortcomings, it demonstrates a standard of care knowingly skipped by the MTCCEC and the town of Falmouth on Wind 1 and later on Wind 2. Falmouth 6 dBA standard. The Falmouth Zoning Board of Appeals has consistently applied a 6 dBA above ambient standard to wind turbine projects, not the DEP's default policy standard of 10 decibels above ambient. When it granted the Notice Clean Energy special permit, the 6 dB level was a condition. When it granted the Scanlon turbine special permit, that condition was added. In deciding Neil and Betsy Anderson's appeal, it recognized the 6 decibel standard, also the Barry and Diane Funfar appeal. In 2013, the town replaced the prior version of the windmill zoning bylaw with a new version which incorporates the ZBA's 6 dB standard. For turbine projects and appeals related to turbines, this board is bound by the standard it has applied consistently. Okay. Why has the ZBA set the 6 dBA standard? Wind turbine sound pressures are unique, with infrasound, lower frequencies, and with a modulating, repetitive, impulsive, and variable character. In 2012, the Falmouth Board of Selectmen ordered a report on Wind 1 and Wind 2 by a firm known as DNV Renewables USA Inc., sometimes referred to as DNV KEMA, because for a short time, DNV had acquired the outfit that had done the 2005 KEMA study. The report is dated March 15, 2012, and contains an excellent description of the unique attributes of wind turbine sound pressures. The DNV report on page 22 mentions 4 often present characteristics of wind turbine sound pressures: infrasound, low frequency noise, amplitude modulation, and impulsivity, the so-called Annex A test. Neither the town of Falmouth nor any of its consultants have ever treated, studied, or analyzed these unique sound pressure qualities in any manner for either Wind 1 or Wind 2. The 6 dBA standard set by the ZBA for large turbines is a way to account for the turbine sound pressures that can cause distress to nearby residents. Next. A penalty of several dBA. The DNV report recognized a 5 dB penalty for tonal audibilities of turbines. In DNV's experience, test data may reveal tones or tonal audibilities not previously predicted or included in a specification. Although not included in the DEP or town noise ordinances, in some locations, turbines containing tones are penalized by adding, for example, 5 dB to the tonal sound power level to the turbine during the planning phase of a wind farm project, resulting in a greater setback. In setting the 6 dBA standard for wind turbines, the Falmouth ZBA has assessed a 4 dB penalty, recognizing the unique character of wind turbine sound pressure. Many acousticians apply such a penalty. There are 2 papers mentioned here which talk about the 5 dB penalty for wind turbines. Next. Studies completed after Wind 1. after the Wind 1 distress was known. There have been many studies done after the distress became known, while only addressing broadband sound pressures and not the Annex A test mentioned above by the town's consultant, DNV. Taken as a whole, these studies impeach any serious claim that Wind 1 and Wind 2 can meet the zoning bylaw provision the town says applies. The Board of Appeals shall ensure, through the use of appropriate engineering data, that there shall be no adverse impacts on the neighborhood in terms of television interference, ice throw, property growth, noise, etc. Next. HMMH was hired by the town to do a study. It reported noise levels above 40 dBA, the town limit at the property line, an average nighttime value of 8 dB above background for a single operating turbine. Modeled results for both turbines operating concurrently indicated noise of greater than 6 dBA for 8 of the 11 sites sampled. Okay? Noise Control Engineering did a report commissioned by the neighbors and found amplitude modulation is present. AM is the repetitive swishing beat or thump occurring at blade rotation frequency, known as amplitude modulation of the aerodynamic turbine noise. Furthermore, the total noise violates both the 40 dBA town bylaw and the state limit of 10 dBA above background. Okay? HMMH did a supplement and reported modeled noise levels as high as 15.1 dBA above background for both turbines operating concurrently and greater than 6 dBA for 10 of the 11 sites sampled. Okay? Weston and Sampson, the town's engineer, did a study in 2011 and found that sound insulation and air conditioning would provide modest improvement in homes with windows closed, but no improvement for low frequencies. Physical sound barriers are prohibitively expensive and impractical. Shadow flicker mitigated by turning off turbines. The DNV study recommended curtailment at wind speeds less than 8 meters a second at night to comply with the DEP noise limits, insulation of nearby homes, purchase at fair market value, and resale of homes the most affected abutters, reduction of noise with blade modification. However, no commercially available means for further noise mitigation on the B82 is available. Okay. How many homes? When asked to consider how many properties would require testing to confirm the exceedances indicated by Ascentech noise model, Tony Rogers, DNV KEMA, replied to Stacy Smith, the CBI facilitator. DNV KEMA suggests that the number of houses to be considered for mitigation is between 20 and 40. Okay. The Annex A tests, I've read to you the tests. This lower box says, without these Annex A test results, governmental bodies do not have a basis on which to determine realistic and appropriate noise ordinances. Okay. The Board of Health review in May of 2012. The purpose was to determine the scope of self-reported health effects from turbines. Testimony was taken from 47 household members representing 63 individuals. The major health effect reported was sleep deprivation, 85%, with attendance stress, 53%, mental health problems, 45%, hearing problems, 32%, cognitive difficulties, 25%. The DEP nighttime study. The DEP had two studies, one nighttime, one daytime. The nighttime concluded results indicate that wind 1 exceed 10 decibels above background sound level during nighttime hours, which is the limit above which Mass DEP considers a nuisance regulated by Mass DEP's noise policy. The measurements were made for wind 1 only. The second turbine, wind 2, was not yet operational. Results from 11 of 12 field studies were greater than 6 dBA above background. 4 of 12 were greater than 10 dBA above background. Also related to the town's 40 dBA limit, 7 of 12 field studies showed turbine sound pressures greater than 40 dBA. The DEP daytime study, although maximum powers for both turbines was not sampled due to low wind speed, several locations exhibited levels greater than 60 dBA above background. The Windtop report, multiple perspective statement. How do we assess the relative weight of the 5 core interests? Should health, safety, and well-being of our neighbors carry the same weight as any of the 4 other interests? We conclude that it should be more heavily weighted above the other interests. Should town unity and reconciliation be weighted the same as climate action implementation or fiscal impact? We conclude that town unity is second only to the health, safety, and well-being of our neighbors. If the Board of Selectmen seeks to end the turmoil surrounding the turbines, then there is only one option. Following the Windtop final report on January 31, 2013, 2013, the Falmouth Board of Selectmen voted unanimously to remove Wind 1 and Wind 2. The decision was approved by the representative town meeting, but failed to garner enough referendum votes to be implemented. The neighbors have studied the Annex A test. While the town and its consultants have not studied unique sound pressures from Wind 1 and Wind 2, the neighbors have commissioned an Annex A type study and a peer review of that study. These were turned over to the town in February and March of this year with no reply. Noise control engineering concluded the methods used herein allow for the collection of infrasonic sound pressure levels within the inside of the Anderson residence. As shown in Figure 6, there is a readily identifiable acoustical signature that can be definitely attributed to Wind 1 and possibly Wind 2 located outside the Anderson home. It went on. To NCE's knowledge, this is the first time such measurements have been performed and reported with respect to the Falmouth turbine. However, this is not the first time such measurements have been performed, and other researchers have collected low-frequency infrasonic acoustic signatures at other wind turbine sites in Wisconsin and Australia, references 11 and 12. As reported in these other studies, the same blade passage rate infrasound and harmonic shown inside the Anderson home have been identified. Given NCE's signature analysis and the dramatic change in the acoustic signature when the wind turbines are shut down, NCE can unequivocally state that the infrasonic signature captured inside the Anderson's residence is 100% attributed to either one or both of the town of Falmouth wind turbines. The wind turbines produce acoustic emissions which are acoustically trespassing into the Anderson's home. The peer review by Richard James. These outcomes were anticipated by the wind turbine studies conducted by NASA and the Department of Energy scientists in the 1980s. Their research was broadly disseminated through acoustical and wind energy conferences. The experiences reported by the complainants were entirely predictable in the Wisconsin and Australia projects as they were for the Falmouth project. Had the Falmouth project relied on all of the evidence about wind turbines and adverse health effects as described in the statement, had due diligence been conducted to seek out information not from the industry or its promoters, the project would not have been presumed to be safe for neighbors. The NCE report documents these conditions and supports the complaints that have been made publicly and privately by residents of Falmouth. This comparison of findings in the NCE report and recent study shows that the occupants of the homes near Falmouth, Wind 1 and Wind 2, turbines are exposed to similar levels of acoustic energy in the same frequency range and with the same tonal characteristics as the occupants of homes in Wisconsin, Shirley Wind, and Australia's Cape Bridgewater communities. These occupants experience sensations strong enough to result in them vacating their homes. It is reasonable and prudent to apply those findings to the homes near the Falmouth wind turbine. Tech Environmental performed the study for Wind 1 when it was going to go to Fairhaven. It was inadequate in many respects, but it did begin with an examination of ambient sound pressure levels and predicted the degree to which these would be increased by the turbine if installed in that location. The Fairhaven study predicted sound pressures at the closest neighborhood of 9 decibels above ambient, which may be part of why the Fairhaven permit was appealed to the court. Tech Environmental is the only acoustical engineer listed so far who will be a witness for the town at the trials on the Wind 1 and Wind 2 turbine matters, though no TE work related to Falmouth has been turned over to the neighbors, even though the town has had the reports of NCE and Rick James for months. In July of 2006, the president of Tech Environmental Inc., Mr. Peter Goldberg, testified before the State of Vermont Public Services Board regarding a wind turbine project proposed by UPC Vermont Wind LLC. The testimony supports the claims made above that wind turbines have a unique set of characteristics that require serious consideration. No impulsivity analysis was performed. Recent research reveals that low-frequency modulated sound from wind farms at night are the most annoying audible sounds these installations produce. Mr. Bajdek of HMMH failed to consider these impacts. 10 times rotor diameter. One reason there haven't been more Falmouths on the Cape is that the Cape Cod Commission adopted a minimum performance standard that imposes a presumptive setback distance for turbines the size of Wind 1 and Wind 2 of 10 times rotor diameter. Minimum performance standard E1.8 noise. All applicants for a WECF, wind energy conversion facility, greater than 660 kW shall perform a noise study and fund a Cape Cod Commission approved consultant's review of the noise study and adhere to a setback of 10 times rotor diameter of the proposed turbine from the nearest receptor or residentially zoned parcel. Multiples of rotor diameter. The Anderson home is located 4.3 times rotor diameter from Wind 1. The Okagawa home is located 4.1 times rotor diameter from Wind 2. Even the wind industry recognizes a setback between turbines to avoid wind interference of 7 times rotor diameter in the downwind direction. If the industry is troubled by low productivity at 7 times rotor diameter, one can easily appreciate that a turbine the size of Wind 1 and Wind 2 can impact residents located less than 5 times rotor diameter away. The serious warning from Vestas on Wind 2. Before the supply contract for Wind 2 was signed with the manufacturer Vestas, the town was asked by Vestas and its general contractor on the project, Loomis, to sign a letter taking full responsibility for the siting of Wind 2 in light of Vestas's articulated concerns about the sound pressures this turbine is capable of creating in this location. This request came in the form of a letter from Loomis dated August 3rd, 2010. The town had its wastewater superintendent, Gerald Patamus, respond the same day the Loomis letter was received by sending a separate letter directly to Vestas. In that letter, the wastewater superintendent assumed for the town all such siting responsibility and liability. An earlier draft of the Patamus letter, dated July 1, 2010, so more than a month before the Patamus letter was sent to Vestas, called for the signature of the Falmouth town manager. During this month of discussion of what to do about the Vestas' refusal to sell Wind 2 because of sound pressure concerns, it appeared that no one on the staff brought this to the attention of the Board of Selectmen based on Board of Selectmen minute meeting, and the signer was switched from the town manager to the wastewater superintendent, who apparently signed this letter assuming responsibility without authority. Why was Vestas concerned? The concern of the turbine supplier is easier to appreciate by reading the Loomis letter, which reads in part, due to the sound concerns regarding the first wind turbine installed at the wastewater treatment facility, the manufacturer of the turbine, Vestas, is keen for the town of Falmouth to understand the possible noise and other risks associated with the installation of the second wind turbine. The town has previously been provided with the octave-band data sound performance for the V82 turbine. This shows that the turbine normally operates at 103.2 decibels, but the manufacturer has also stated that it may produce up to 110 decibels under certain circumstances. The difference between 110 and 103 is important to note that the HMMH studies commissioned by the town after the distress was known acknowledged the maximum sound power level of 110 for the Vestas V82, but inputted the average octave band data of 103.2 power into its projected sound pressures. Thus, the HMMH studies are low by about 6 to 7 decibels. Even so, both the main HMMH study and the supplement showed many instances of exceedances at the neighbor's home. Mr. Patamus's reply to Vestas: the town of Falmouth was responsible for siting the turbines, and we recognize the published octave band data sound performance for the V82, understand that the option to mitigate sound from the V82 through curtailment of operation of the turbine at certain wind speeds and directions will detrimentally affect power production, and recognize the potential for ice throw from wind turbines. The distress was well known. As of that date, the date of the Loomis letter and the Patamus letter, the town had received numerous complaints from neighbors. Brian and Catherine Elder had sent the town a registered letter, May 10, 2010, and met with the assistant town manager and building commissioner at their property to show the degree of distress to town officials. By the warning date, the town planner had sent an email to neighbor Barry Funfar, that was June 3, 2010, regarding the turbine distress. Also by the warning date, the ZBA and the Falmouth Planning Board had held a joint meeting to discuss the problems with Wind 1. That meeting took place on June 4, 2010. By the warning date, the town had held a meeting to discuss the scope of a sound study to be done by an engineering firm known as HMMH of Wind 1 actual and Wind 2 projected sound pressures. That meeting was held on June 10. Also, a letter had been sent from Assistant Town Manager Heather Harper to neighbor Barry Funfar, dated June 15, 2010, discussing measures being taken by the town in response to complaints. In her letter to Mr. Funfar, she indicates that the town has instituted a mitigation measure which turns off Wind 1 in certain wind conditions, which had, by that date, the date of that letter, been utilized 39 times and had a positive impact. Vestas even asked Weston and Sampson about their concerns. An email from Brian Hopkins at Vestas to Stephen Wee of Weston and Sampson reads, Steve, I don't believe I saw a feasibility study for Falmouth other than the site plan. Was a sound study updated with the additional turbine? Does the information I provided in the octave band data support the conclusions that you are conservatively within Mass state sound regulations? The table highlights the fact that the V82 produces greater decibels when it reaches its stall regime beyond the IEC design standard at 95% capacity. The table also helps recognize the effect of shear on the sound levels experienced at receptors, which should also be considered with the sound study. My email was lost from the last time we did the first turbine, so I don't have a great record of information. But do you have this decibel mapping for Falmouth? No, there was no decibel mapping. The answer, there appears to have been no answer to the email. I gather this from documents that have been requested through discovery. There never was any decibel mapping for the second turbine or for both turbines operating together as of the date of the Patamus famous letter accepting responsibility. The concerns of Vestas, accurate acoustical mapping, was apparently ignored. The representation about a two-turbine configuration, the entirety of the treatment by the town and its consultants of installing a second turbine at the wastewater treatment plant was a representation by the assistant town manager made at town meeting. We've passed the technical feasibility test. The size of the site is over 240 acres. It can support two turbines. The distance to residences is greater than 1,000 feet from any residence, and the prior studies that we have done are relevant for a two-turbine configuration. That comes right out of the town meeting transcript. The only prior study was the KEMA study, and it dealt with a single turbine. Wind 2 received no acoustical analysis at all. The town did not even do a KEMA level review of the potential adverse impacts of Wind 2, as insufficient as KEMA was. There was no sound study, there was no review of the impact of two turbines operating in close proximity and the phenomena of beating that happens when adjacent turbines beat into and out of synchronization with one another. No study whatsoever, just the assistant town manager telling town meeting that the prior studies are relevant. The ZBA ruled in the Funfar appeal. Therefore, the board affirms the appeal by Barry and Diane Funfar that the town wind turbines located at 154 Blacksmith Shop Road in East Falmouth are a nuisance to the property located at 27 Ridgeview Drive in West Falmouth that directly and negatively affects the health and well-being of Barry and Diane Funfar, owners and residents of said property. And they ruled in the Anderson appeal. The board does find, through testimony given at the hearing and through site visits by the board members, that in its collective judgment, a nuisance does exist by virtue of excessive and obnoxious noise likened to the repetitive takeoff of jet plane and other objectionable features, including pressure waves, caused by the operation of the wind turbine, and that the combination of these conditions negatively impact the appellant's ability to use and enjoy this property. Judge Muse issued an injunction in the Anderson case, a preliminary injunction which remains in effect today, limiting operations of both Wind 1 and Wind 2 to daytime, 7 to 7, with no operation on Sundays and 3 specific holidays. The bar for such an injunction is extremely high. The applicant must show irreparable harm if it's not issued and a strong likelihood of success in the case. Here's what Judge Muse said. The Andersons have submitted affidavits and medical records supporting their claim that the nuisance produced by the turbines has resulted in substantial and continuous insomnia, headaches, psychological disturbances, dental injuries, and other forms of malaise. The court finds the Andersons' claim that they did not experience such symptoms prior to the construction and operation of the turbine, and that each day of operation produces further injury to be credible. Taking the evidence of irreparable harm in conjunction with the moving party's substantial likelihood of the merits of their claim to uphold the ZBA's finding of an ongoing nuisance, the court finds that there is substantial risk that the Andersons will suffer irreparable physical and psychological harm if the injunction is not granted. The bylaw, as stated above, the ZBA has determined that it is the proper special permit granting authority and that the town is entitled to apply and has applied for a special permit under the old version of section 166, a claim not accepted by the neighbors and preserved as an appeal issue. The old version of section 24166, like the new version, only allows turbines as accessory uses. As to the old version, it was incorporated into the public use district through section 24033G5, which allowed windmills only as accessory uses and only by special permit. Wind 1 and Wind 2 are not accessory-sized turbines. Each of Wind 1 and Wind 2 is designed to produce over 3,000 kilowatt hours per year of electricity, roughly double what is needed at the wastewater treatment plant, which uses about 1,500 kilowatt hours. If one turbine is double, both together can, if not mitigated, generate about 4 times the electricity needed at the wastewater treatment plant. 4 times the electricity needed at the wastewater treatment plant renders the turbines greater than accessory size. The town told the neighbors that a smaller accessory-sized turbine was planned. In 2004, the town sent a mailing to all neighbors with a questionnaire. 7 neighbors filled out the questionnaire indicating that noise was an important concern. This questionnaire advised the neighbors of the size of the turbine plant. When the town shifted to a larger turbine and then a second larger turbine, it did not write back to the neighbors and disclose the switch. The field trip to Hull. Not only did the town send such a questionnaire, but it organized several field trips to see a turbine in Hull known as Hull 1. The size turbine mentioned in the questionnaire mailed to all neighbors. None of the warrant articles on the town's turbines at the wastewater treatment facility, the published warrants providing notice, mentioned the size turbine to be installed. Ask the neighbors. The ZBA is encouraged to ask neighbors Catherine Elbert and Barry Funfar, both of whom filled out the questionnaire and went to see Hall 1 with the town if they believed, up until the moment Wind 1 appeared above their homes, that the size turbine being installed was the size of Hall 1, a 660 turbine, not the 1650 kilowatt size of both Wind 1 and 2. Each of Wind 1 and Wind 2 is 3 times larger than Hall 1 in terms of blade swept area. The following is what the questionnaire said. There were never any follow-up mailings of any kind to contradict this communication about purpose and size. In the summer of 2003, the town of Falmouth conducted an energy audit which revealed that the town spent over $140,000 in fiscal year 2002 on electricity to operate the West Falmouth wastewater treatment plant. As energy prices continue to rise and upgrades to the plant are made, these costs are estimated to increase to $200,000 per year. At this time, the town of Falmouth is undertaking a feasibility study to evaluate the potential of installing a wind turbine at the wastewater treatment plant to provide the needed electricity. The location currently being considered for the wind turbine is approximately 1,500 feet from any residence with dense vegetation existing in the buffer areas. Wind turbines of the type and size being proposed stand approximately 240 feet high from the ground to the tip of the blade at its highest position, 12 o'clock. The phrase, the type and size being proposed stand approximately 240 feet high from the ground to the tip of the blade in the questionnaire describes a 660 turbine, the size of Hall 1 and the turbine at the Mass Maritime Academy and Board. In contrast, Wind 1 and Wind 2 are 398 feet tall. The difference between a 660 and a 1650 turbine is material. The sound pressures from a turbine the size of Hall 1 are considerably less, both in terms of overall A-weighted sound pressure and especially the lower frequency pressure. Hall 1 is a Vestas B47, 45 meters across the rotor diameter, whereas Wind 1 and Wind 2 are Vestas B82, 82 meters across the diameter. Comparing published Vestas sound pressures for the lower frequencies, the differences become very pronounced. For example, at 63 hertz, a low frequency but still audible, the sound pressures from the Vestas B47 are 15.9 decibels lower than the same measurement for the Vestas B82. In the spring of 2005, there appears to have been a shift to going big within the Falmouth Town Hall. One sentence of the minutes of the Falmouth Energy Committee meeting of March 28, 2005 shed some light on this shift. Is it better to have too much power if we get a great deal on a bigger turbine? The same minutes had suggestions for visual comparisons. Compare to local big things, downtown radio tower, put things in scale, compare wires, foreground to the tower background, photo art, compare Hull turbine 660 to 1500 to 2300 turbine noise, etc. Compare to water generators, vertical wind turbines, compare cost of battery power backup to grid power backup. Why the need to compare Hull 1 turbine to the larger size? The reason is simple. Up to this point, the 660 turbine is what the town had told the neighbors it was planning to install, questionnaire and field trips. The town never prepared and presented any comparison of the noise generated by a 660 turbine with the sound pressures of a 1500 or 2300 kilowatt turbine, a significant difference. Stall versus pitch. Wind 1 and Wind 2 use an older and disfavored mechanical technique to shed unwanted wind, called stall regulation. The Vestas B82 is no longer manufactured. The state has recognized that stall-regulated turbines are allowed. Wind Turbine Health Impact Study, published jointly by the State of Massachusetts Department of Public Health and Department of Environmental Protection, dated January 2012, Appendix F, stall versus pitch control noise issues. Pitch-regulated turbines are quieter than those with stall control. This is particularly the case in higher wind speeds. The turbine specifications. The authors of the November 2005 KEMA feasibility study on page 21 state, it should be noted that special low noise versions exist, which as a consequence have lower power output. The town did not specify the low noise version when issuing specifications for the turbines to be constructed at the wastewater treatment plant. The town did not follow its own plan. The town of Falmouth did not follow its own plan in implementing the wind energy program at the treatment facility. That plan is embodied in the zoning bylaws at the time. Special permit for all turbines required, not just privately owned turbines. And the November KEMA feasibility study. The KEMA study specifically called out section 24166 of the bylaws and stated that further study of noise would be completed as part of a special permit review process required under that bylaw. This was skipped, notwithstanding that the town's engineering consultant had actually prepared the application. The standard of care was not met. Then, once the sound pressure distress caused by Wind 1 was well known, the town ignored a serious warning from the turbine manufacturer and proceeded with no acoustical analysis of the second turbine and no study of the combined impact of both turbines running at the same time. This fell far below the normal standard of care at the time and constitutes negligence. Good faith. In denying the neighbor's appeal of the June 11th order by the ZEO, this board accorded the town flexibility due to its good faith in submitting an application for a special permit. Madam Chair, if I got that wrong, I apologize.
Thank you.
The application is incomplete, with no treatment of acoustical impacts on neighbors required to be shown through engineering data as per old version of section 24166. But also, the town has not applied for a special permit for Wind 2. Counsel to the Board of Selectmen has indicated that the town may or may not apply for such a permit on Wind 2. This was by email. Mark Bobrovsky, your attorney, wrote to Diane, the gentleman, that means Alec Watt and me, we're asking when we might expect a second special permit application. When you know, please inform us. Thank you, Mark. Attorney Tillison replied, Mark, I'm not certain there will be one. We are considering it. I will, of course, keep everyone informed. Thanks, Diane. Wind 2 is situated exactly the same as Wind 1. It was constructed without proper permitting under the zoning bylaw. It was built in the same zone and is the same type and size turbine. The town is evidencing a lack of good faith by not yet applying for a special permit for Wind 2. The town's Wind 1 application. The old version of the windmill bylaw, 166, which this board says applies to the town's special permit applications, contains these 5 requirements, A through E. Setback, total height plus 10 feet, adverse impacts on neighbors, including noise through engineering data, wires to be underground, use permit required, turbine not to be operated without one, protected from unlawful access. The town skipped acoustics again. The Wind 1 special permit application addresses A, setback, C, wires, and E, protecting from unlawful access. As to the requirement of a special use permit before the operation, the town is in violation. More importantly, as it did in 2008, the town has skipped treatment of potential sound pressure impact. The application, which consists of 1, a filled-in form, 2, a one-page summary, and 3, a set of plans, contains no acoustical treatment of Wind 1 and the impacts on adjacent neighbors as required by the bylaw. The town has submitted a one-page substantive information about Wind 1. This is a sharp contrast to the application filed in 2008 by Notice Clean Energy when it applied for a special permit from the ZBA for the sister turbine to Wind 1. Sister turbine because it is the other turbine that the MTC CEC had in storage and is the same model and size. The notice special permit application was lengthy and included a full, though faulty, acoustical analysis beginning with an evaluation of existing sound pressures in the neighborhood and treatment of by how much these would be increased by the proposed turbine. The town might supply an acoustic study later. In order for an application for the special permit for a turbine under either version of section 24166 to be considered complete and ready for a public hearing, it must include an acoustical analysis that shows no adverse impacts on the neighbors. The town has submitted none. The public hearing should not have been started without this study, so the public has time to hire its own consultants and critique the study. The town of Peru, Massachusetts ZBA recently refused to commence the ZBA public hearing until the turbine application was made complete with the necessary acoustical study. The town can't delay its study and submit it later in the special permit process, which would limit the ability of other parties to critique. If the town files a late acoustical analysis, some questions arise. Will the public and the neighbors be given time to have a peer review done? Will it apply a penalty due to the unique character of wind turbine sound pressures? Will it address the Annex A test? The ZEO's refusal to cease operations until turbines are permitted. As to Wind 1, the ZEO responded to the present request for enforcement that, in my opinion, it is my opinion that any deviation from those parameters will constitute a violation of a court order referring to Judge Muse's injunction. This reasoning is empty and illogical. Judge Muse did not know that Wind 1 and Wind 2 were operating without lawful permits when he issued his injunction order. Issuing a cease and desist order would expand on and not conflict with an order prohibiting operations at night and on Sunday. As to Wind 2, the ZEO responded to the present request for enforcement that to date, there has been no decision from any court of competent jurisdiction relative to Wind 2, and therefore no enforcement action shall be taken at this time. This is, 1, an application of a duty which at this stage belongs only to the ZEO, and 2, a pretext to hoping that the neighbors will have to endure another set of years litigating the same legal question that has just been resolved by the courts as to Wind 1. This is more evidence of a lack of good faith. The The town attorney's guidance. In February of this year, Town Council Frank Duffy gave the building commissioner and the ZBA an opinion favorable to the granting of a cease and desist order. This was the case of Tavares, 10414, where such an order was issued. From the February 12, 2015 email from Frank Duffy to Surya Boudreau, the building commissioner has authority to issue cease and desist orders when he observes a violation of the zoning bylaw. The power is inherent in the office. Where there is a violation of the town zoning bylaw, issuance of a cease and desist order is an acceptable and common enforcement practice among municipal officers charged with enforcing zoning bylaws. The CEO should be consistent in the exercise of his authority and issue a cease and desist order to the town, since it is very clear that Win 1 and Win 2 are operating in violation of the zoning bylaw. Other neighbors. The 12 neighbors of Win 1 and Win 2 listed at the start of this presentation are not all of the Falmouth residents distressed by the sound pressures and shadow flicker caused by the town's turbines. One neighbor represents himself in the litigation. 2 couples dropped out of the litigation process for financial reasons, but were listed as parties in lawsuits. There are other neighbors not comfortable participating publicly, but who have reported distress. He can't turn them off. In an email from Linda Okagawa to Neil Anderson in 2013, I saw Eladio Gore this afternoon. He said he got my email. He said he can't turn it off, although he understands the flicker situation. He said he has been to Barry's house and does not hear the wind turbine over traffic. I said that today it sounded like a jet plane, clearly very audible at the receptor's location, even when there is traffic. I explained that the really bad days for me are when it is running in high winds and even over the nameplate. Then the blades are sending off little tornadoes that hurt your ears. He said that he understands what I'm saying, but he can't turn it off. I said that the wind top group had said flicker mitigation is needed, cited study, and explained that I have experienced excesses over what model predicted. He won't address it, can't turn it off. I said, if you're not going to help, send me a note and I'll go to the Board of Appeals. This is a nuisance limit. The standard can't be met. The standard you'll be applying is you should ensure through the use of appropriate engineering data that there should be no adverse impacts on the neighborhood in terms of television interference, ice, throw, noise, etc., and an unrebuttable presumption. Next. The ZBA authority on appeals such as this. In exercising the powers granted by this section, the Board of Appeals may, in conformity with the provisions of this chapter, make orders or decisions, reverse or affirm in whole or in part, or modify any order or decision, and to that end shall have all the powers of the officer from whom the appeal is taken and may issue or direct the issuance of a permit. Appreciating that the issuance of a special permit for either Win 1 or Win 2 might well be legally untenable, given the evidence of adverse impact and the long history of failing to meet the prevailing standard of care, this board should use the powers provided by Chapter 40, Section 14, and issue the cease and desist orders for Win 1 and Win 2 sought by the neighbors. Until Win 1 and Win 2 complete the special permit process, they should remain out of operation. Conclusion. The board should issue the cease and desist order for Win 1 and Win 2, recognizing we are in this situation not by oversight, but by intentional decisions to skip critical analyses and ignore serious warnings. The town customarily uses this enforcement tool where it is clear that a zoning bylaw is being violated. Win 1 and Win 2 are operating without any permits. A building permit without a special permit required, where required, is not a legal building permit. The Haddad and Shea cases cited in the board's initial treatment of this question are focused on allowing time to avoid an order to remove a structure, not cease operations until permits are procured. The neighbors continue to experience distress on a daily basis. The likelihood that the town can meet the applicable standard, no adverse impact, is slim, given the ZBA's past recognition that the turbines constitute a nuisance and the conclusions of many studies in hand, including those commissioned by the town. I thank you. Next. I thank you for allowing me to make this full presentation. I apologize if it took longer than expected. It's a background. I think it's an important amount of information. It may have been too much information to try to communicate as quickly as I did. I will stop here. Alec Watt, the attorney I work with, who represents the Andersons as well as I do, would like to come to the podium and more specifically address just the legal questions, if that's okay.
Can you turn the lights back on, please? Thank you.
And I will just note as with timing, because I do want to address Win 1 first. Certainly, we want to afford you time to speak as well. It's been about an hour 55 minutes to an hour, so if you could limit to 15 minutes, I think would be
It'll be no more than 15
generous.
minutes.
And then, of course, we'll probably have questions, the town will want to respond. And again, I'd like to focus just on Win 1, because I think that there are some different complexities going on with each turbine. So you'll be afforded another opportunity to speak to Win 2. Thank you.
Thank you. It may be a little difficult to strictly adhere to that parameters. The Andersons did appeal both, but I will try to focus it in. The basic premise here is that the building commissioner is empowered, it's his responsibility to enforce the zoning bylaws of the town of Falmouth. It's this board's mission statement that this board will uphold the zoning bylaw of the town of Falmouth. We are now into our 6th year. This litigation began in 2010 when the Andersons first raised the issue that Win 1 needed a special permit. Although not legally sufficient, this board voted in favor of Neil Anderson's appeal, holding that a special permit was required. We also have 3 separate nuisance cases that have occurred since that time. There's the Anderson appeal, which this board voted unanimously to find that the Win 1 and Win 2 were nuisances. There was the Funfar appeal, which was again allowed by this board, and there was the Okagawa appeal, which again, although not legally sufficient, did vote in a majority to overturn the building inspector's decision. So this leads us to the appeal of the June 11th Eladio Gore decision, his enforcement letter, but for which this board would be unanimously in favor of the Andersons' position that these wind turbines are in violation. Now, that decision, and I think the board will probably raise the issue of res judicata in that case, that you've already ruled on the Win 1 cease and desist order. But I'd like to just point out how the board was in error on that. The board's decision stated that it relied on the Haddad case for the proposition, for the purported proposition, that enforcement is not warranted where there is a possibility that the landowner may cure the defect or the zoning violation through appropriate permitting or what. Well, Haddad did not go that far. It did not go that broadly. The Haddad case dealt with the question of whether a structure must be demolished. In the Haddad case, there was a permit for a single-family residence, which turned out enormous, which turned out, in the opinion of the building commissioner, to constitute an inn rather than a single-family residence. At some point there, the building commissioner did in fact issue a cease and desist order. And that order was never appealed. In fact, the work was stopped following just a period of time agreed to between town officials and Haddad that they couldn't close the structure just to keep it weatherproof during the pendency of appeals. Following trial and in the appeals court, the ruling was that the building should be demolished. When the SJC got the case, they said, no, demolition is too extreme a condition where the applicant can possibly cure that defect, and as long as he proceeds expeditiously to doing that. So Haddad, which really only has about 5 cases citing it for the same proposition, all of which deal strictly with the question of demolition, is limited to that finding. Just the proposition that demolition is not warranted where an applicant can possibly cure, and proceeds expeditiously to do that. So I don't think that was sufficient for this board to say that cease and desist order was not warranted. Now, this board has established a rule of decision with respect to cease and desist orders. I think this particular board is probably familiar with the Tavares case, the GSTVS LLC case, which was decided earlier this year. So in that case, Tavares was operating a landscape yard for 10 years under a special permit. Disputes arose, and the building commissioner, or actually the assistant zoning enforcement officer, determined that Tavares was operating outside of the special permit, advised Tavares to seek a modification of the special permit or obtain a new special permit, which Tavares did. He applied for a permit, which was subsequently denied, and which he then appealed to, I believe, land court. Within 2 months of him appealing to land court, during the pendency of that appeal, the building commissioner issued a cease and desist order. Mr. Tavares appealed that decision, which this board upheld unanimously. I believe unanimously, but they did uphold the building commissioner. And the basis upon which this board stated that the cease and desist order was proper was that if there is a violation of the zoning bylaw, then a cease and desist order is proper unless there's some arguable basis that the property is not in violation. In other words, if it's being appealed to court or whatnot. It was being appealed to court, but nevertheless, this board found that the cease and desist order was proper because the applicant actually admitted that at that point in time, the property was in fact being operated unlawfully. Did not have the benefit of a special permit. This board rejected other precedents cited by the applicant there and stated that as long as there's a zoning violation, but there's a reasonable dispute as to whether that is in violation or not, then a cease and desist order would not be proper. But where an applicant acknowledges that there's a zoning violation, then the cease and desist order is an order. Well, that's exactly the case that we have here. The appeals court has ruled that, and definitively, that Win 1 is in violation of the bylaws because it doesn't have a special permit. And on this date, where we stand right now, Win 1 does not have a special permit. I know you don't want me to get into Win 2, but just by analogy, Win 2, as stated by Attorney Senni, is identical to Win 1. It stands in exactly the same factual and legal position as Win 1. So it too is in violation. The other violations, of course, are that this board has found Win 1 and Win 2 to constitute a nuisance. That's another violation. So why did Commissioner Gore deny the cease and desist order? Well, he denied the cease and desist order based on Judge Muse's preliminary injunction. He claimed that he could not deviate from that decision at all. Otherwise, it might be a violation of the court order. And that's included in his July 17th supplemental letter in the Anderson appeal. It's just disingenuous at the best, because Mr. Gore is raising that order to a talismanic status that Judge Muse says, well, you can't operate outside the hours of 7 to 7. And therefore, that it must, Mr. Gore interprets it that you must operate between 7 and 7. But that order, that preliminary injunction, is just setting an upper limit of what the town is allowed to do. The town could certainly voluntarily not operate it. And likewise, there would be nothing prohibiting Mr. Gore from issuing a cease and desist order with respect to that. I've included in the packet tonight that order from Judge Muse. And what Mr. Gore also conveniently ignores in that order is not only did the judge set certain time parameters for the operation of Wind 1 and Wind 2, he also ordered specific actions to be taken. And those actions were that he was to direct the town to engage an acoustical engineer to do a study. He was to direct the town to contact the turbine manufacturer to determine if modification was feasible. He was to direct the town to develop and implement a remediation plan. And he was to ensure that the town performed all of the above in an expeditious manner and without unreasonable delay. Finally, he was also required to keep the appellants informed of all developments, all information that he received relevant to those. We're almost 2 years later, and not one thing has been done by Mr. Gore with respect to that. So I would say his reliance on Judge Muse's decision is arbitrary, capricious, and has no supporting relevance to his decision to cease and desist. And that's it in a nutshell. Any questions?
Thank you. Let me see if anybody has any questions. John? No. No questions. Okay. Paul?
No questions, thanks.
TJ?
No, right now, I'm sure.
Okay. Ken?
Yeah, so the nuisance decision, just remind me, I was here, but the limitations that were placed on the operation as a result of that.
Well, of course, that, well, you're talking about the zoning board.
Zoning board.
I don't have the decision with me. My recollection, though, is that, well, the procedure was the Andersons sought enforcement based on the nuisance zoning bylaw. This board overturned it, and I believe directed the building inspector to require the town to take appropriate mitigation measures. I don't know, am I stating that essentially correctly?
Not the exact words.
That was of course appealed to Superior Court, so nothing was done with respect to that. This board set no particular conditions, only directing the building commissioner to take appropriate steps there.
Okay, so there were no, as part of that, there was no mandate to cease and desist or anything like that?
There was not by this board, that's
Okay.
correct.
Thanks.
TJ, you're still good? I just have a question. You said that there were five cases citing the Haddad case. And I believe it was for the proposition, and correct me if I'm wrong, that where an applicant can cure and proceed expeditiously?
Correct.
Okay. Were any of those 5 cases for just concerning use? Or were they all with respect to tear down orders or structures?
Well, they were all with respect to tear down orders. One was a rescript opinion, I included that. Unclear from that decision exactly what was going on. It was one paragraph, and it really didn't explain the procedural history. One was a situation where a structure, I believe that was the, I believe it was the Chambers case, the 1996 case, which dealt with an apartment building that was, I believe, oversized. There were, say, something like 20 extra units. I didn't provide the board with a copy of all of these decisions. So these were elderly residents who were residing there, but the court said, well, go back and see if you can get a variance, a special permit, or what. We're not going to throw old people out on the street and tear down the structure. And I apologize, I don't have the Cornell case with me, which would be the most recent case. But again, iterating specifically with respect to the issue of demolition. No question regarding the cease and desist order.
Okay. That was all I had for the time being, I believe. All set? Okay, so I think what we'll do is take a short break before the town's presentation, and 5-minute breaks, and we'll plan on coming back at 8:25.
Thing that I have never seen. Judge uses stuff.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't look like I'm gonna get dinner, does it? Is there any place that stays open later?